Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the great city of Newark, and welcome to Ironbound Community Corporation's Early Learning Center. As you all know, Newark is a city on the rise, yet we're still not without our challenges. It's a city still with significant poverty, as well as with the majority of our people constituting a community of color. And we, like many cities across the nation, are the most vulnerable in the country. And if you don't think that that's accurate, ask LeBron James what it means. That's why we still say here, Black Lives Matter. This is our Early Learning Center. This is where children 0 to 5 get a chance for an equal opportunity in life. This is funded by the federal government, the state government. And that money was leveraged so that a private donor can give us $5 million to expand this center. It's a good example of government at work for the benefit of its people. This Early Learning Center, by making children kindergarten ready, brings them on a level playing field with their counterparts from Montclair and Summit, etc., and hopefully takes them out of the prison pipeline. This is what government funding can do in support of the most vulnerable in our country. 30,000 to 50,000 children in the state of New Jersey receive this benefit. And we need to not only sustain it, we need to expand on it. But giving children a great start in life is not the only thing that gives them an equal opportunity in life. Coming out of this building and in this playground and breathing clean air is what really contributes as well to their healthy growth and development. Newark is an environmental justice community, meaning simply that we live with disproportionate contamination, pollution, and the like affecting the people in our community. We live here in the shadow of the state's largest garbage incinerator, 650 megawatt power plant, thousands of diesel trucks which traverse our community and streets every single day, affecting the lives of people who live here, the young and the old and everybody else. And it really is not good enough to give children a good educational start without giving them good public health and minimizing the opportunity for them to contract asthma that keeps them out of school. The president's proposed budget cuts and the president's pullout of the Paris Accords represents a threat to our people, represents a threat to the most vulnerable in this country, enhances the opportunity not for making these children our leaders of tomorrow, our entrepreneurs and our social justice advocates, but in fact harms them. This Ironbound was affected deeply by Hurricane Sandy, floods regularly with rainstorms, and is a heat island in the city of Newark, as is the rest of the city. We need to improve on things, not decimate things. For our part, I will tell you that we will continue with our partners here to continue our organizing and advocacy work in support of strong policy that protects children's health, protects the welfare of all of our citizens, particularly our most vulnerable and our communities of color, so that we may all have an equal opportunity at the American dream. And that's why we're here to support all of our partners, and especially our progressive public officials who are leading the fight in Washington. And with that, I want to introduce to you Senator Cory Booker.
Thank you very much. So this is an extraordinary gathering of leaders at every level of government, federal, state, and local, of nonprofit leaders, of activists, all coming together in the wake of President Trump's last week of not leadership but retreat, not leadership but surrender, not leadership in climate, but really being a villain when it comes to his own people and his own community. I want to recognize the heroes behind me, and they'll be coming up to this microphone. I'd be remiss if I didn't also point out that Senator Ron Rice is here, one of Newark's great champions. Please give him a round of applause. He's embarrassed to come forward because I have a better haircut than he has. This is really, really a personal issue for me because of having had the privilege of serving in one of the greatest jobs in America, now held by my mayor, Ras Baraka. We live in a city that has benefited for years, from a consciousness about climate change, from an activism in our federal, state, and local government on climate issues. But for us, if you talk to people in Newark or Camden or Patterson or Passaic, talking about climate change is really not what folk talk about. We talk about environmental justice, because these issues that we are talking about on a global scale are personal to the people that live in communities that are struggling every single day for justice in America. This is not about global warming for them simply. This is not about melting of ice caps for them simply. This is about the health of our children and the economic opportunity for our communities. Right now, we are seeing in America the President of the United States retreating on climate activism and surrendering the fight for environmental justice. You can just look around the place where we are right now and see how Americans have suffered at the hands of brutal injustice focused on vulnerable communities. Whether it's the fact that we stand within miles right now of a Superfund site at a time that Donald Trump is cutting resources for cleaning them up. How we stand or surrounded by brownfield sites at a time that Donald Trump is cutting resources or seeking to cut resources for the cleaning up of brownfields. We stand in the midst of a transportation superstructure where air quality is not just an arcane intellectual issue, but something our communities suffer with every single day. And so what we saw yesterday with President Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords is not just about us surrendering the ground of global leadership. This strikes at the heart of the health, safety, well-being, and economic opportunity of the community I stand in now and cities and communities all across our country. Let me be specific by just looking at one issue, the issue of air quality. I'm standing here in a playground where children come and play every single day. I'm standing actually surrounded by educators, the mayor of the city of Newark himself, an educator. We now see in Newark, as well, frankly, as in the entire country, that the #1 health reason children miss school is asthma. You talk to parents who are literally trying to deal with the tragic issues of their children being rushed to the hospital because of asthma. Deal with parents who struggle with the knowledge that their children are dealing with a condition that costs them resources and money and time away from work. Well, we know that the challenges of climate change for the country and for the world is about economic justice here. Because recently we have seen that just in the past 30 years, our children have been suffering from air pollution and climate change at rates that are unconscionable. Asthma rates have doubled in the last 30 years in our nation. And if you want to be more particular about it, we see that the asthma rates for the city of Newark are 3 times higher than they are in suburban areas. Donald Trump had the mendacity to ask African-American communities during the campaign, what do you have to lose? Support me, what do you have to lose? That haunting and taunting language so angers and enrages me, because we've seen already with his proposed budget that what communities of color have to lose, they have to lose resources for educating their children, resources for job training, resources for jobs, resources for parks. African-American communities under Donald Trump are losing across the board. But when it comes to issues of environmental justice, when you see that African-American children are 3 times as likely to suffer an asthma attack, and we know that climate change is expected to literally cost over 250,000 additional deaths year-round, when we have a president that retreats from the fight on environmental justice, we know that he is attacking not just all Americans, but particularly attacking African Americans. 68% of black Americans live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant. And low-income communities of color, including Latinos and Native Americans, are more likely to be impacted by smog and emissions from fuel power plants. This is the real truth of what's going on now on a global scale. That at a time we need activism and American leadership, we see cowardice, we see retreat, we see surrender. At a time that the jobs of the future are jobs involved in the clean economy. When this city here has taken folks who've come home from prison, children who are struggling, and found ways to put them to work on environmental retrogrades or in the solar energy industry, for us to retreat from investing in those programs, it hurts America now and hurts our leadership in the future. So this is a press conference with a whole lot of folks speaking out. And I'm going to step aside and let you hear from other voices. But I want to end with the words of the great Angela Davis. She said, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am going to change the things that I cannot accept." And so please know this right now. This is not an end to America's global leadership on environmental justice issues. This is not a time where we're going to give up or we're going to just step back and criticize what's going on. This is a time that we are uniting to fight Donald Trump's policies, to fight for our children, to fight for our communities, to fight for our health, welfare, and safety. This is when the battle just starts. It's not an end. And I'm proud today to stand with heroes of mine, people who are fighting every single day in this larger fight for our children, who understand that the kids that play in this playground need champions, not just here in Newark, not just in our State House in Trenton, but need champions in Washington. All of us have a responsibility now to be those heroes and to be those champions. And I'm bringing forward now a congressional partner of mine, a man who himself, like me, lives in a great American city, a man who has a track record of fighting for environmental justice, for fighting the programs that make a difference for our kids. I bring forward Congressman Series.
Thank you, Senator. Joe LaFave, nice to be here again. We were here when this place opened, and we were impressed then, and we are more impressed now. Kevin Brown, welcome to Newark. Where are you? I see you some behind me. Mark Morrell, from the National President of the Urban League. My good friend Ron Rice, Mayor, always present. Thank you for being part of us. And Phyllis Alokay, the New Jersey Citizen for Action. You know, I'm here today as a former mayor, former speaker, as someone who lives in a community not very different than what we're standing here now. And I couldn't have said better what Senator Booker said about the careless, the ridiculous of what's going on in the president's office, stepping away from the Paris Accord. But I'm here also as a member of the Transportation Committee and speak to you the devastation of this budget that it has on transportation. Congressman Don Payne and I serve on the Transportation Committee. He couldn't be here today at a previous engagement, but there's no daylight between us. We both represent the city of Newark. And when you look at this budget and you see the slashing on the transportation side, the impact, let's be real, New Jersey is one big transportation hub. When you cut 13%, $16 billion from the transportation fund, from infrastructure, it has always been where the federal government assists areas like ours with our infrastructure. And when you have the attitude in Washington that the state and the cities should take care of the infrastructure, it brings back that old idea. Those who have communities that are wealthy, states that are wealthy, can continue fixing their infrastructure. But communities where we live, we become a second-tier community. We cannot exist without the federal government helping us. We're not rich communities that live here. And it just reinforces the whole idea of this mentality at the president's office. Those who have, good for you. And those who don't, you're on your own. So I'm here to tell you that we're going to fight to make sure that we get our fair share for infrastructure money here in New Jersey. When you look at this budget, let's take one item, CDGB money, Community Development Block Grant. Every mayor in this state knows how important that is, to fix your street, to fix the potholes, to fix the sidewalks, to fix your parks. To have an aggressive Meals on Wheels program. You all know about the Meals on Wheels. We help those people who can't move, those people that need it the most. Well, the CDGB program is being changed. What they want to do is make it a block grant, meaning that you get peanuts. Forget about the gateway. I mean, with the cuts, we look at New Jersey Transit and all the things that we need to do here to fix to make the commuters be able to go to work. That's going to be slashed. Forget about a Tiger grant that help the ports like it has in the last few years, where there are 250,000 jobs on these ports. Forget about that. Forget about the capital investment program grant to do the big projects that we need to. That's also going to be slashed. So again, communities that can afford it are going to be fine. But communities like ours are going to be devastated if this budget goes through. I am so happy to have my colleagues here with me. I'm so happy that we have Senator Booker, someone who's been a mayor and knows what it takes. Senator Menendez, who has been a mayor, knows what it takes. Donald Payne, who has been a member of the city council, knows what it takes. And of course, my good friend, Bonnie Watson Coleman. So my friends, thank you for being here with me. And I can promise you that this budget will be taken apart by us. And I can promise you that we are not going to give this budget a vote unless it's changed. Because we cannot have two communities. Those who can do and those that can't do. So my friends, I give you my colleague, one of the best additions that we have made to the Congress of the United States. Because Bonnie Watson Coleman has been around in Trenton, knows the issues of New Jersey, knows how to fight for the issues that she cares for, and I have worked with her many years. And she's one of the most sensitive, nicest human beings you can come across. Thank you.
So I want to thank Senator Booker for bringing us together. I want to thank Congressman Sears for introducing me. I want to thank the mayor for the good work he does in this great city and the voice that he's given this city. And I want to thank all of our other colleagues and friends and cohorts in the battle for freedom and justice for all who are standing here. This has been an incredible couple of weeks. I mean, we look at what's happening internationally as it relates to our position on the world stage, and we look at what's happening domestically as leadership on behalf of working families and families that are vulnerable and senior citizens and ill people and disabled people and women and the LGBT community and every other community that's not rich, white, and wealthy. We know that we've got a troubling administration here. This is the most un-American presidency that we have had in our history. And we have a responsibility to be diligent and vigilant on all levels. So we saw what he did to our allies on the national stage, how he disrespected and admonished them while he embraced those whose relationships with us are quite questionable. And we saw what he said when he did not commit to Article 5 about we will be there, we the United States of America will be there if one of our allies is attacked. And then we found out what he did yesterday when he said, actually stupidly, that I'm going to walk away from the Paris Accord, but I might come back and renegotiate it, as if you can renegotiate something with one one or two people at a time that involves almost 200 nations. So we understand that he doesn't understand. And our problem is that not only does he not understand, he doesn't hire people that either want to understand or can understand. But today, I want to say a couple of things about what's happening in this budget and what's happening to us as communities of color and what's happening to us women. First of all, I serve on Homeland Security with Don Payne, and he is a very vibrant voice for the kind of grants that come into our communities to ensure that we have the resources necessary to be proactive as well as reactive should we be threatened in any way, shape, or form. And if you look at this budget proposal, you will see that grants that come to communities to make them safe are being attacked and are being diminished in this budget. When you as a woman look to see what is happening in this budget, you who generally are the recipient to a greater degree of things like SNAP grants and LIHEAP and other sorts of safety net programs, you will see that those are the very programs which are on the chopping block here. It is not the tax credits and the opportunities for corporations and for very wealthy people to grow and thrive and become wealthier. It is those who are in need of government to do its job, to ensure that there is equality of opportunity, to ensure that we're protecting and preserving the rights of everybody, at the same time providing the opportunities for growth for everybody that's ready and willing to work hard. We have a lot of work to do here. We as women and women of color, we are being attacked on all levels. Whether or not it's this administration's determination to undo justice in the Justice Department and roll back the Office of Women or roll back the Civil Rights Office, or whether or not it is taking our access to contraceptives and other health care that should be ours. Health care, ladies and gentlemen, is not a privilege. It is a right in this country, and we need to start treating it as such. There are so many other programs that this ill-fated budget, the budget document, represents your core values. And if that's the truth, then this budget document says that this president of the United States of America cares for 1% of the people and cares nothing for the 99% of the people that need this government to function and function appropriately. We are the people of this government. This is a government of, by, and for the people. And when the people show up, government has to listen. And so I'm grateful for the energy that I see in New Jersey with so many organizations coming together, standing up, protesting, marching, calling, visiting, having their voices heard, and demanding that this government respond to the needs of all people. And I am also energized and hopeful that this is having an impact on Congress members in ruby red districts, because people are showing up in their districts fearing things are going to happen to them that are going to hurt them. And things will hurt them. Not only did the health care bill that was sent to the Senate say we don't care a doggone thing about poor people and women and sick people and disabled people and elderly people, the bar is so low that anything that the Senate negotiates is may be better, but it's still going to be horrible. So we have to stay on message. We have to work with all of our organizations. We have to work with all of our alliances. And we got to reach beyond our borders and talk to those that are in other states and other communities and get them energized, because they have to understand that this is not some lofty conversation that is taking place on some public policy plane. This is really about actions or the lack of actions that are going to hurt each and every one of us unless we represent that 1%. We may be aspirational and want to be a part of that 1%, but there's always going to be a majority. There's always going to be a bell curve. And this Congress needs to push this administration to recognize that this bell curve, that the curve is where you find the majority. And you take care of the majority's needs, and you take care of those who are least among us in this country. And when you do that, you lift up everybody. And when you lift up everybody, you continue to make this country the great country it has been and is struggling to become. And with that, I am delighted to be in this great city, a city that I kind of grew up and hung out and partied in at a very young woman and learned a lot. And I'm just excited by this young, vibrant mayor, Mayor Ras Baraka. And it's my pleasure to bring him before you.
Thank you. I don't know what's left to be said after the Congresswoman. She hit everything on point as she always does. It's a pleasure to be here. I just want to thank Senator Booker, of course, for calling us all together, all of our colleagues that are here today. I want to thank the Urban League for being a part of this. Mark Murray, we love you, and we appreciate the fact that you're here with us, and your folks locally on the ground are doing good work as well. I want to thank Joe and the ICC and the work that they're doing down here and the work they do, period, in our city to hold us accountable and stand in the gap as many times as they possibly can. I just want to talk a little bit about how, these budget cuts are going to affect us here in the city of Newark and affect people of color. And I do want to talk about, and I think they're one and the same, about Trump's removing himself and removing the country from the Paris Accord. And I think that is incredibly detrimental to us all. As Senator Booker talked about earlier, asthma in this country is increasing. In Newark, we are 3 times higher than any other place. In a 2-year period, 27,000 emergency room visits for children in this city alone for asthma takes place because our city is 70% impervious surface. The heat in this city is about 50 degrees or more higher than it normally is in other municipalities and cities. And because we don't have a sufficient tree canopy that protects us from the ultraviolet rays of the sun, which means that our kids, our families are almost in an oven here in the city, and we do what we can to try to mitigate those issues, but we obviously need help from the federal government. And to cut that means to increase the number of emergency room visits for young, presumably black and brown children in a city like Newark that is struggling with poverty. It means making sure that young people do not have the kind of help that they need in a city such as this. We need to look at the deep immoral contradictions that exist here. One, to begin to cut all of these things from poor, working class, black and brown folks throughout the country, while at the same time seeking tax credits and tax breaks for the rich. At the same time is a deep and kind of immoral contradiction that needs to be raised in all of this as we refer to these budget cuts. There's a $9.2 billion cut from the Department of Education that's going to affect Pell Grants. The Pell Grants, the students in Newark rely on Pell Grants probably more than anybody else in this state. It eliminates programs for New Jersey to utilize community learning centers or after-school programs, which is going to hurt us completely. There was a mention about the cut to $193 billion over the next 3 years for SNAP and TANF and all those things that support and help struggling families in this city. It will take money from welfare, from parents that are lined up downtown early in the morning. It's about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. You see long lines of families out there trying to get SNAP and trying to get TANF. Hundreds of billions of dollars cut from housing alone. We have about 20,000 people on a waiting list for public housing in the city by itself. That also includes a cut in housing choice vouchers. It includes a budget slash to public housing funding by $1.8 billion. It also includes a cut to homeless assistance grants by $133 million. All of these have a disproportionate effect on our city, a direct and immediate effect on low-income and no-income residents in this city. The most vulnerable of us will be affected by these budget cuts if nobody stands in the gap and reduces this. CDBG cuts or the complete elimination of CDBG, which has been put on the table, is completely and utterly ridiculous. We use this money completely to fix roads, to demolish unsafe structures and buildings. We use it to infuse economic development in neighborhoods where financial institutions will not go. We use this money for home grants. We use this money to supplement affordable housing. All of this is important to us, and if it's cut, it means a serious cut in what we're able to do here in the city of Newark. As was mentioned, there was a budget cut in infrastructure and transportation that includes the port, which also includes small business as well. We've already experiencing budget cuts from the state around small business development. One from the federal government will hurt us, particularly the kind of growth that we're trying to witness in the city now. We're investing in small businesses, we're improving small business and expanding business in this city, where people are finally saying they want to come to the city of Newark. To cut federal and state money in this area hurts us immediately and directly. So these budget cuts have a very deep impact on how we function in this city every single day. It is not simply something that we're opposed to because it's the politically correct thing to do. This is a matter of life and death for the residents here of the city of Newark. It is my obligation to stand up and raise my voice in behalf of 300,000 residents of this city, because with these federal budget cuts that are coming down the pipe, it means that basic services to communities like folks in Newark will be cut, and will be cut almost in half, if not completely. So we are relying on our congressional delegation, our federal delegation, to stand up, and I applaud Senator Booker and all of the folks that are here today and all the community organizations and unions that are standing with us to say we will not sit silently and watch these things happen while people suffer every single day, while they at the same time look for tax breaks for the 1% in our country. Thank you. Oh, I have the pleasure to bring on John Whitten from NJPP.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. Thank you to Senator Booker for convening this press event and bringing together so many elected officials at the federal level, at the state level, and advocates from around the state to decry these budget cuts. The title of Donald Trump's budget proposal is America First. But what we know is that that is incredibly deceptive, and that a better title might be Americans Last, because there are deep, deep cuts to health care, to food assistance, to rental assistance, to environmental protections that are going to harm tens of millions of Americans and millions of New Jerseyans. As others have said, these cuts are going to hurt low-income and working-class New Jerseyans the most by taking a hacksaw to an already tattered social safety net. Families across the state are already struggling to get by. They're struggling to provide enough food for everyone in their family, to find a place to live, to get a job. This will make that situation much, much worse, and it'll create undue hardship across the state. At NJPP, we like to say that budgets include numbers. There's a lot of math and wonky stuff in budgets, but budgets are really about our priorities as a society. There goes that. And they're really about people at the end of the day. And I think that this budget document from the president shows more clearly than ever before that his priorities are not all of us. His priorities are the wealthiest Americans and providing huge tax cuts to them while he dismantles the social safety net. Today, NJPP ran some numbers about who's at risk from these huge safety net cuts in New Jersey. It is no surprise that it's New Jerseyans of color, because when you dismantle programs that reduce poverty, eliminate poverty, or even just change the circumstances of people living in poverty, you're going to disproportionately harm the people who are suffering from poverty the most. And due to long-standing structural barriers in the state of New Jersey and in this country, people of color right now in New Jersey are more than twice as likely to live in poverty than white people. So across the board, whether you're talking about healthcare or TANF or LIHEAP or any of the other safety net programs, people of color in New Jersey stand to have disproportionate harm from the Trump budget. I'm just going to give one example, which is Medicaid. Medicaid right now insures 1.8 million New Jerseyans, including 850,000 children. In the Trump budget, it is slated for more than $600 billion in cuts over 10 years, and that is on top of more than $800 billion in cuts in the Affordable Care Act repeal bill that passed the House. In New Jersey, 2 out of every 3 people who are on Medicaid are people of color. And the overall population in New Jersey, 1 out of 3 residents is a person of color. We see the same trend across the board in every single program that is currently under attack by the president and by the Speaker of the House. And I'm glad that everyone is here to stand up and fight back. Thank you. Who am I turning to? I'm going to turn it over to India Laria from Citizen Action.
Thank you, John. Well, I want to say thank you, Joe, for having us here. Senator Booker, our most capable and esteemed members of Congress. Mayor, it's definitely an honor to stand with all of you in this fight for people in New Jersey, for people of color. You know, when the Affordable Care Act came on board, the rate of uninsured went from way up here to way down here. Astounding, astounding progress that we made. But now in Washington, the Republicans are bent. They are bent on repealing, replacing, and undoing all of the progress that we've made, thus putting people here in New Jersey, people of color, at risk. They want to rip all of the coverage that millions of people got right out of their hands. Cuts to Medicaid will harm hundreds of thousands in New Jersey. You've heard from John Whitten the numbers. I won't repeat them. But nearly half of the people on Medicaid in New Jersey are children, largely African American and Latino. Overall, 65% of all recipients of Medicaid are people of color. These cuts that the AHCA propose will hurt them most. And if that's not enough, this president's proposed budget cuts food stamps that help children eat. It cuts heating and rental assistance that help them maintain a warm and safe place to live. It further cuts, as you've heard, Medicaid, further putting people of color in this state at risk. Add to that cuts to environmental programs, cuts to educational programs. In fact, this budget cuts most of the things that assist people of color in this state. Now, these are not obscure numbers. These are not statistics that are not known in Washington. Let's not forget tax cuts. Tax cuts for the wealthy, most of whom, I might add, are not people of color. It seems very clear that this president and these Republicans know exactly what they're doing and exactly who they're hurting. It's reprehensible and it's immoral. Instead of closing the gap and helping to diminish the ravages of poverty, instead, they're choosing to widen the gap and further hurt people whose existence is already fragile. Well, I will tell you that we at New Jersey Citizen Action, along with our partners and our elected officials, we say that we've come way too far and gained way too much to ever go back. Since January, New Jersey Citizen Action and our partners have been marching. We've been writing. We've been calling. We've been turning out by the thousands. And we will continue to fight for our health care and fight against an immoral budget that benefits the wealthy by taking away the gains that we've made. We say no ifs, ands, or buts. We say no to immoral budget cuts. We will stand by all of the people in New Jersey, defend the poor, and make well the sick. No ifs, no ands, and no buts. No to immoral budget cuts. And now I'd like to bring Kim Gaddy of Clean Water Watch.
From Clean Water Action. Thank you. I'm the environmental justice organizer for Clean Water Action, but more importantly, I am a resident. And as an environmental justice organizer, we always say we must speak for ourselves. And so I'm so thankful that our Senator Booker, as well as our mayor, always keep individuals from the community in the forefront. And we do have a seat at the table, as you can see with so many individuals here. But I'm also one of those individuals who have 3 children who are asthmatic. So I've witnessed firsthand my child having an asthma attack that I would wish that on no parent in this room. And why? Because of the zip code that I live in. Why? Because of the disproportionate amount of pollution that we suffer from in our urban cities such as Newark. I say no. And I am and will always be that voice for the voiceless, like so many of my colleagues here behind me. So that brings us to today. Trump is abandoning leadership, as was stated, and it makes the role of states like New Jersey, but more importantly, cities such as Newark across this state, much more important. Newark has always taken on a role, and I'm confident that our next governor is poised to do the same. We can't afford that our key parts of Newark, from Dayton Street neighborhoods to the Ironbound section of which we are currently, Passaic Valley Sewer Authority, the Newark Airport or Seaport, and of course the Jersey Shore, to be underwater. But Trump has sent a clear message that to us to drop dead. Yes, he did. And I say to us that we must rise up, we must resist, and we just have to say no. Newark is ground zero for climate change, and this will disproportionately suffer. So many of us will suffer disproportionately from Trump's decision to join Syria and Nicaragua as the only other 2 countries not fighting for the climate crisis. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Newark needs more green jobs, fewer ER visits from asthmatics and deaths from heat island effects, as was stated, and less property damage from extreme storms like Sandy. But all will get worse with Trump's decision yesterday. And I want to just close by saying this. It is indeed our opportunity right now to rise up again and resist. In the city of Newark, some of us can't escape the pollution, so we live in death zones. And it is not the right of number 45 or this president to control the lives of so many in urban America. So I'm here to stand up not only with my mayor and my senator, but the other elected officials and my community activists. We can really be the voice that is needed. And so I'm glad that he has given the power back to us. And now we need to show him across this state, every city, that our voice matters, our lives matter. And now I bring to you Reverend Rodriguez from the National Latino Coalition. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Kim. All right, Rev, give us a little something now.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank our dear Senator Booker, and the congressional representatives who put this together today. I believe that as Americans, we're all called to love our neighbors. And this amazing, supreme, and universal principle and ethic given unto humanity is not truly reflected in this proposed budget. So I stand today as a faith leader because I believe that this budget as a document is a moral document. As a little boy, born and raised in the inner city in New York, in the hood as some call it, my six siblings and I benefited from federally funded health clinics, HUD-supported housing, and SNAP, food stamps. I believe that these programs were and still are a temporary hand up and not a handout. You see, sick kids are hard-pressed to attend school. Hungry kids don't learn as much as the well-fed. Displaced families long for a secure place to call home. I propose, and I think it's important, that we put school books before bombs, education and housing before increases in more defense spending. Now more than ever, our children and families need support and compassion. We appeal to our president, the Congress, and those with the constitutional power to designate the right funding to stand up for our communities, especially our communities of color. We call for policies where all Americans can prosper. And quickly, some words for our friends that are Spanish speaking. Creemos que como estadounidenses somos llamados a amar a nuestro prójimo y que este principio de amor y ética dada a la humanidad no está reflejada en lo que es este presupuesto que ha sido traído como una propuesta. Como niño entiendo los beneficios de recibir algunos fondos públicos, no como una limosna, sino como algo que nos ayudó a trascender la pobreza. Y creo que hoy más que nunca nuestros niños y familias necesitan apoyo y compasión. Por eso apelamos a nuestro presidente, el Congreso, a aquellos que tienen el poder constitucional para designar los fondos apropiados que se paren a favor de nuestras comunidades, especialmente nuestras comunidades latinas, de color y afroamericanas. Muchas gracias. Que Dios les bendiga. Thank you. And now I want to present Mark Muriel, President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Urban League.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. I am Mark Muriel. I'm President and CEO of the National Urban League. We are the nation's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization. I'm proud, come on up, Vivian, that here in the city of Newark, we have the Urban League of Essex County, led by Vivian Cox Frazier, one of our 88 affiliates across the nation. Let me say I'm proud to be with Senator Booker once again. We were together a few weeks ago on Capitol Hill, and always great to be with Mayor Baraka in this great city. I want to underscore something. 20 years ago, I was mayor of New Orleans. I was in my first 18 months as mayor. Newt Gingrich showed up with his contract on America and proposed massive budget cuts which look exactly like what we see today. In that time, the mayors of America, the community leaders of America, compassionate members of the Senate and the House of Representatives launched a national resistance to push back, to educate, to inform, and to let everyone know how vital these investments are for America's urban communities. We defeated that effort 20 years ago. And I'm confident that with the leadership being demonstrated here today, that we can defeat that effort once again. Now let me offer a few comments on the Trump budget. By any standard of evaluation, the Trump budget falls short of his promise to make America great again. The budget represents a conscious decision to abandon children, vulnerable Americans, and those who suffer sickness, homelessness, illiteracy, ignorance, and unemployment. While, yes, ladies and gentlemen, risking another recession. Some people look at budget proposals and they see numbers. When the National Urban League looks at budget proposals, we see people. We see people. Now, the vulnerable Americans are the college-age young people who are at risk or entangled in the judicial system, who are being transformed by mentoring, counseling, and job training they find right here at the Urban League of Essex County with our Urban Youth Empowerment Program. They are the tens of thousands of families who've realized the dream of home ownership through the Urban League's housing counseling and foreclosure prevention programs provided right here in Newark at the Urban League of Essex County. They are the seniors in our Urban Seniors Job Program, Americans aged 55 and older who found stable, sustaining jobs through the work of the Urban League of Essex County. Every single one of those investments right here in the city of Newark are at risk. These programs are either proposed to be completely eliminated or substantially reduced. And I can tell you, for the good work that Vivian does here in Newark and the good work many other community-based organizations do, the investments today, while we appreciate it, are not enough. So to cut is to go in absolutely the wrong direction. Now, I also want to point out that this proposed budget would put a 15% axe to the Department of Housing and Urban Development and eliminate community development block grant programs, which are the lifeblood of many municipalities in allowing them to make important transformative change. Ladies and gentlemen, this budget would strip public resources away from 90% of the American children who are in our public school system and shift them to private schools that lack accountability. This budget is morally wrong. We have called, and we call today, this budget proposal a job killer, a dream killer, and a people killer. This budget does not deserve the support of the National Urban League. It doesn't deserve the support of the men and women in the Congress of the United States, and it certainly doesn't deserve the support of the people of the United States. So I'm proud to stand with the leaders today and say that what is happening in Newark with Senator Booker's leadership is the beginning of a national movement to push back and say to the Congress, we need the Congress to tear this budget up and start over and write a budget that's true to the American people. Amen. One that protects America's most vulnerable communities, our children and our seniors, and one that lifts up America's urban communities in America in the 21st century. So thank you so much. I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer.
So we're going to probably wrap this up unless there's any pressing questions, and we can give individual interviews afterwards. But I want to thank everybody for being here. I particularly want to thank the mayor. I know how busy, it's the hardest job in all of politics, for being here and showing that this is a priority for him. And then, of course, I got to look after my Urban League chapter head, but to have the head of the National Urban League here today in New Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey, it shows the extraordinary urgency of this time. So thank you, everybody, for being a part of this. Joe, thank you for hosting. And again, we'll give individual interviews as they are needed.